Welcome to British Focus, your go-to channel for the latest news and in-depth discussions on the most pressing issues affecting the United Kingdom. Today, we bring you an important update on a case that has gripped the nation, the Southport child killer. Many of you have been closely following this tragic story, and the latest development is one that will undoubtedly stir strong emotions. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to British Focus so you never miss an update on the most significant stories unfolding across the country. Now, let's dive into the latest on the Southport tragedy. In a decision that has sparked outrage among the victims' families and the wider public, the Attorney General has announced that he will not be referring the sentence of Axel Ruda Kubana to the Court of Appeal for review. Despite calls from grieving parents, multiple MPs, and members of the public demanding a harsher punishment, legal advisors concluded that there was no viable legal basis to argue for an increased sentence. The news has left many stunned, as they hoped for a full life order for the killer of 3 innocent young girls. Ruda Kubana, now 18, was sentenced in January to a minimum of 52 years in prison after being found guilty of carrying out one of the most horrifying mass murders in recent British history. His brutal attack took place last July at a dance class in Southport, Merseyside, when he was just 17 years old. The shocking and senseless act led to widespread discussions about the sentencing of young offenders and whether the law should be changed to allow whole-life sentences for minors in exceptional cases. The court heard how Ruda Kubana entered the Heartspace dance studio, where a Taylor Swift-themed class was taking place. Without warning, he launched a frenzied and unprovoked attack, brutally murdering 9-year-old Alice Silva-Argia, 6-year-old Barbary King, and 7-year-old Elsie Stom. The young girls, excitedly attending their class, had no chance of escape. The horror did not end there. Ruda Kubana also attempted to murder 8 other children, whose names have been withheld for legal reasons, as well as dance instructor Leanne Lucas and businessman John Hayes, who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The nation was left in shock, and the incident reignited concerns about the adequacy of the justice system when it comes to violent crimes committed by minors. The sheer brutality of the attack raised questions about whether 17-year-olds should be subject to the same sentencing standards as adults when they commit heinous crimes of this magnitude. Despite the overwhelming public and political demand for a whole-life order, which would ensure Ruda Kubana dies behind bars, the court was legally unable to impose such a sentence due to current laws. Whole-life orders are typically reserved for offenders aged 21 and over, with very few exceptions for those between 18 and 20. For offenders under 18, such a punishment is legally impossible, a fact that has fueled frustration among the victims' families and their supporters. Following intense pressure, the Attorney General, Lord Herma KC, reviewed the case in consultation with senior criminal barristers and the Crown Prosecution Service. However, he ultimately decided not to pursue an appeal, citing a lack of realistic legal grounds. In a public statement, he acknowledged the sheer brutality of the crime, calling it a barbaric act that has left the nation shaken. His statement read, "No words can fully capture the horror and inhumanity of this case. The suffering inflicted upon the victims, their families, and the entire community is beyond measure. However, any appeal must be based on solid legal precedent. After thorough review, we have concluded that there is no legal path to argue for a harsher sentence without risking a failed appeal. No one would want to put the families through an unnecessary legal process that could ultimately lead to the same outcome." While some legal experts support this decision, arguing that 52 years is already an exceptionally high minimum sentence, others, including MPs and grieving parents, believe it is not enough. Among the most vocal critics is Southport MP Patrick Hurley, who had previously urged the Attorney General to review and challenge the sentence. He has described the punishment as unduly lenient, arguing that such a monstrous crime warrants the most severe consequences available under British law. A parent of one of the surviving children also expressed outrage in an interview with The Sun, stating, "This monster should rot in jail. My child is traumatized for life, and he gets to walk free in 52 years? It's unacceptable. The law needs changing. Children like mine will never get justice as long as the system remains like this." The case has now reignited a national debate on sentencing laws for underage killers. Many Conservative and Labour politicians have voiced their support for reforms that would allow whole-life orders to be applied to juveniles in exceptional cases. Conservative leader Kai Baddock, alongside Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, has suggested that the legal system must evolve to reflect the severity of certain crimes, even when committed by minors. The argument is that a person capable of such extreme violence should not be treated as a child under the law. Even Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer weighed in at the time of the sentencing, describing Ruda Kubana as a vile offender who will likely never be released, regardless of the technicalities of his sentence. His comments indicate a growing political will to explore reforms, but whether legislative changes will actually take place remains to be seen. For now, the families of the murdered children have been informed of the Attorney General's decision. While some may find some comfort in knowing that Ruda Kubana will likely remain in prison for the rest of his life, others will undoubtedly feel a deep sense of injustice, knowing that a whole life order was legally out of reach. The Southport tragedy has left an indelible mark on the UK, forcing a national conversation about whether the justice system is too lenient on underage killers. The question remains, should the law be changed to allow harsher penalties for juveniles who commit crimes of this magnitude? With mounting political pressure and an outcry from the public, many will now look to the government and the judiciary to see whether legal reforms will follow in the wake of this case. Will this tragedy serve as the catalyst for a major change in the UK's sentencing laws? Or will the current system remain in place, leaving families of future victims to endure the same frustrations? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Should minors be eligible for whole life orders in exceptional circumstances? Should the law be changed to prevent cases like this from happening again? In other news, a tragic and deeply disturbing incident has shaken the quiet village of Knockholt, Kent, where a woman in her 40s was fatally shot at the Three Horseshoes Public. A place where families gather, friends meet, and life carries on in peaceful routine was suddenly turned into a crime scene. And yet, the suspect remains at large. How is it possible that in a country with strict gun laws, a person can commit such a horrific act and simply vanish into the night? Police were called to the pub just after 7 p.m., responding to reports of a seriously injured woman. Despite the best efforts of emergency services, she was pronounced dead at the scene. This was not just an isolated tragedy, it was an act of brazen violence in a public setting, one that raises serious concerns about security and law enforcement's ability to track down armed suspects before they strike again. Authorities have linked a recovered vehicle to the suspect, discovering a firearm inside near the Dartford crossing. But if they have such strong leads, why is this individual still out there? The fact that the killer was known to the victim suggests this wasn't a random attack. It was personal, calculated, and deliberate. Eyewitnesses described chaos erupting outside, with one local councillor recalling how he was having a Valentine's Day meal when everything spiraled into panic. The pub has since closed, and forensic teams have spent hours scouring the scene for clues. But will justice be served? Or will this case, like so many others, drag on while a dangerous individual roams free? In other news, what happened outside the Turkish consulate in London is a stark reminder of how easily tensions can escalate into outright violence. A man set fire to a religious text in what was clearly a provocative and inflammatory act. But does that justify what happened next? Instead of a lawful response, the situation spiraled into chaotic street justice, as another individual took matters into his own hands, launching a knife attack on the book burner. Now, let's be clear, burning a religious text in front of a consulate is nothing short of a deliberate attempt to provoke. Whether one agrees with it or not, it was a legal act in the UK. But what followed was not. A 59-year-old man armed with a blade decided that violence was the answer. How did this happen in broad daylight in one of the busiest areas of London? And more importantly, why do we seem to be normalizing mob justice in situations like this? Both men have now been charged, the book burner with a religiously aggravated public order offense, and his attacker with actual bodily harm and possession of a weapon. But what does this say about law enforcement in the UK? How did an altercation like this escalate to the point of a stabbing before authorities stepped in? Even more bizarrely, footage circulating online appears to show a delivery rider involved in the incident, a detail that raises even more questions about how random individuals are being drawn into these highly charged confrontations. This isn't just about one act of provocation or one act of retaliation, it's about the growing erosion of public order. If people can physically attack others based on offensive speech or actions, where does it stop? What happened here is a dangerous precedent, one that the authorities need to get under control before street violence becomes the new norm. In other news, Prince Harry is once again at the center of controversy, but this time, it's not about royal feuds or tell-all memoirs. A US judge has ordered the disclosure of his visa records, forcing the American government to reveal whether the Duke of Sussex was given special treatment when he entered the country. And let's be honest, this isn't just about paperwork. It's about whether the rules apply equally to everyone or whether privilege trumps the law. We all remember Harry's own admissions in his memoir Spare, openly discussing his past use of cocaine, cannabis, and magic mushrooms. Under normal circumstances, these revelations would raise serious red flags for anyone applying for a US visa. American immigration laws are strict when it comes to drug use, and many ordinary applicants have been banned from entry for far less. So the big question is, did Harry receive special treatment simply because of who he is? The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank, is leading the charge, demanding transparency over whether his visa application was properly vetted. If it turns out that Harry failed to disclose his drug use, then we're looking at a serious issue, one that could, in theory, lead to deportation. Now, would that actually happen? Of course not. Let's not kid ourselves. The US government isn't about to throw out a British royal, but that's precisely the problem. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't even be having this conversation. And just when you thought this couldn't get any messier, Donald Trump has jumped in, making it clear that he wouldn't deport Harry but wouldn't hesitate to call out Meghan Markle. In a recent interview, Trump described Meghan as terrible, implying that Harry has enough problems already without needing a deportation battle. It's classic Trump, turning the focus from legal scrutiny to personal drama. So what happens next? By February 20th, the Biden administration will have to reveal which records can be made public. Will this be the scandal that exposes double standards in the immigration system? Or will it all be quietly swept under the rug? Either way, one thing is clear: if the average person had admitted to drug use in a published book, they wouldn't have been allowed anywhere near a US visa. Let us know what you think in the comments. Should Prince Harry be treated like everyone else? Or does his royal status make him untouchable? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. See you in the next video.